We are here to talk baseball with Chuckles Tim Smith.
I would have told you to give me a better hashtag than the wedding films, but we just found out the other hashtag no longer works. So.
Yeah, well, that's why we subbed in whatever was working. But
thanks for the heads up. Are we going to be able to talk about the lobster on this episode?
If you want to embarrass yourself, you're perfectly you're willing. You go ahead.
No shame in my game. I'm very self-effacing.
Okay.
My favorite stories are the ones that make me look really bad. So.
Okay. Up to you. Go for it.
Anyway, I don't know. So Stefan likes to come to the East Coast and hit some great seafood restaurants in Newark for birthdays and special occasions. So I guess it was last summer or maybe last spring you came out for something, and we went to, what's the name? Zebra's
in Newark, so it's close to downtown Newark, and it was down neighborhood, Portuguese neighborhood, also about 10 minutes from Newark Airport.
His dad, it was his favorite restaurant when he was out here in Brooklyn. And anyway, we went one night, and Thursday night was double lobster night. It was like $36 for 2 lobsters, a plate of their homemade chips, and probably like some other side dish or whatever. And I was like, these will be like tiny, crappy lobsters. And they were like 1.5 pound lobsters. They were Maine, beautiful, perfect lobsters. It was one of the most glorious meals I've ever had. Okay. So Stefan, 6 months later, is like coming out for my 40th birthday to celebrate hitting my last country. Was it Syria?
Yep, a week before. Yeah.
It was a week before. He had hit Syria right before his 40th birthday. There were lots of celebrating to do. I didn't care about any of that. I was like, we're going for double lobster night. All right. I'm very excited. I go, forget Stefan's birthday. Forget all the countries. Daddy getting double lobster. So we show up, and happy to see Stefan and some other people I knew. And then they regretted to inform me that there were no more lobsters. I think the person before me ordered it, and they got the last order. So I was like the guy from anyone who's seen Office Space when they're passing out the cake, and then he doesn't get the cake. That was me. I just wanted a piece of cake. I just want my double lobster. So then, Stefan, you can take it from there. What happened next?
You did not react well to the revelation that they had sold out of lobsters.
I was not happy.
You refused to order anything, as I recall.
I didn't order anything because me not ordering anything would really, like, my hunger strike would really anger the restaurant. Like, they would be apoplectic about me not ordering any food. They would have been crying in the back. Luckily, Kenji, yeah. Kenji was sitting next to me, and Kenji ordered something, and he offered me some of it, and I did indulge because it was a pretty enormous. The place gives you a ridiculous portion, so I had a couple spoonfuls of whatever he was eating. But I still, to this day, get a little upset about the lobster that never was, because it's just so good. It was so darn. The thing is the anticipation, right? Like when we travel. Sometimes
you took so long to order too. You should have ordered when you came in.
Sometimes it's better than the actual thing, right? Like sometimes planning a trip is better than going on the trip, right? Like sometimes I have more fun planning a trip than actually going on a trip. As soon as he told me we were going there and it was the double lobster night, this was like 3 weeks before too. Every day I was like I was almost one of those people who does like the Facebook countdown, like 87 days till I go to Orlando, 86 days till I go to Orlando. I was going to do it for lobsters, 17 days till double lobster. That's where I was with this dinner. I was so excited. Like I was more excited about that than the impending birth of my second child, which was the same month. When's your birthday? September, right?
Yeah. I mean, the point is, you live 20 minutes from this restaurant. It's not like you can't go. But
anyway,
it is the New Yorker, Jersey City, Hoboken thing that 20 minutes away is.
Oh, you remember? Well, anyway, our ride home, where you were with Who gave you a ride back? Was it? It was Zach or no? Somebody gave you. I thought.
What do you think? I think Zach, my wife, wasn't feeling well, and she went home early. But
you don't want to take wrong turns leaving that restaurant either, because you find yourself in some pretty scary, dark areas that don't seem like they should have cars on them, and that's what happened after that one too.
I think I was driving, right?
You took.
I take that back way to 1 and 9, and it just goes on over roads that are essentially urban rubble.
Yeah. It looked like Apocalypse Now or like Mad Max, a couple of the roads leading out.
I've always felt that if somebody wants to capture the Escape from New York spirit, just go on the Pulaski Skyway.
Anyway, sorry I digress, but I know Stefan gets a kick out of that story, so I had to bring it up, and it makes me laugh.
Yeah, you got a great video of my birthday with my parents and all the friends such as yourself that I treasure. So
very nice. It was very. When's the next trip?
I have absolutely no plans anywhere. We went an hour from our home in Olympia, Washington, is about as far as we're going to be heading anytime soon.
You're going to wait till they figure things out, right? And hopefully have a.
I just think it's unnecessary. It's probably irresponsible for me to travel. I have no need to, and we've done these just on.
Like everyone thought, like that. I will say, we've done one flight, one trip. My in-laws live in St. Louis, so my mother-in-law, as mother-in-laws do, was desperate to see her grandchildren. So we went July 1st. We flew from LaGuardia to St. Louis, 2.5-hour flight, roughly, on Southwest. Took an Uber. Uber broke down on BQE, which was not ideal. The guy wanted to pull over in the median between the highway and the off-ramp. There's a little triangle of space where you can pull. I said, absolutely not. We're not going to pull over there. So I made him pull over on the main road, and we called another Uber. Got there plenty. There was a few other hiccups. They wanted all this identification for my baby, and we're like, he's a baby, he's fine. But we got on. I ran into the TPG crew. They were filming a segment at LaGuardia when I was there. Yeah. So Zach Honing was doing the talking. So anyway, I saw some TPG people, but it was pretty dead there, and the flight was maybe 40%, 30% full. We literally had 4 rows. We sat in one row together, and there was a row in front of us empty and the 3 rows behind us empty. And the other side, we did 2 and 2. My baby was in the window. I was on the aisle. My wife was in the aisle next to me, and my 4-year-old was in the window. And the 3 rows behind both of us were empty, and 1 row in front of us were empty. So we socially distanced well. When we got there, we went and grabbed our luggage. Her parents picked us up outside. It was pretty seamless. And on the way back, 10 days later, we flew United on I don't know, what are the small ones called? The Embraer 50-seaters.
Oh, yeah.
What are those? I'm not a...
The CRJs? Or
the 50-seaters, the 2 and 2. I don't know. I forget what they're called. The CRJ, maybe. Anyway, there's maybe 15 of us. Maybe 15 of us on that. And everyone wore a mask. We got there. We got our stuff. We called an Uber back, Uber, a Lyft home, which was quicker, and had the windows down. And knock on wood, that was over 3 weeks ago or so, almost 3 weeks ago, and health seemed okay. But I wasn't super happy about it. We contemplated driving out there, but I'm currently carless, although I just bought one. I'm getting it tuned up. But we've been right before the pandemic. We got in an accident. So we had a rental for a couple weeks, and then we didn't really need one for a while. So we didn't start using a car again until May. We would do some day trips to visit my parents in Western New Jersey and take the kids to an empty park where my son could run around and things like that. So I know you do a lot. You haven't had a car for years. I was asking you for some advice because I was doing a lot of Hertz rentals and things like that. I did accumulate enough for one free day. But yeah, actually, the renting car situation being in an urban area isn't so bad. The issue was a couple times I went to Hertz, we only really needed it on the weekend. I had to wait an hour one day, and they had overbooked, and had all these people in a small, cramped office.
Yeah, yeah. The local offices don't necessarily follow the airports or have the grab and go if you've got your
Can't
profile.
do it. No, you can't do it. So I just
I mean, they can, but it's really just if the employees feel like it or give a darn, and they often don't. And
yeah, and they weren't really taking very good protocols with COVID. Like the one guy didn't wear a mask. He didn't.
it's worth calling. I mean, your area. I mean, I used to live there, as you know, and your area. All the locations are tough to deal with, and you can sometimes call ahead and get lucky that they'll get the contract ready. But we're here to talk about baseball. So Michael in the comments, he's saying, as an ex-waiter of Joe's Stone Crab restaurant on Miami Beach, I want to know what are your three favorite food items ever purchased at any baseball stadium, and which stadium you rate had the best overall culinary offerings.
Wow. Well, that's I've been to all of them multiple times and a lot of the old ones. So, trying to think. So I'm trying to think where I get it. When I'm in the Midwest, I get excited about getting some bratwurst, like in Milwaukee, stuff like that, like the cheese curds and things like that. I mean, just like they have a stadium secret sauce, the Brewers, that my friend that lives out there will send me. It's tremendous. It's just called the secret sauce, secret stadium sauce. You get it at the grocery store. I ran out of my go-to favorite steak marinade a few weeks ago, and I used the stadium sauce on a porterhouse, and it tasted better than Peter Luger's. It was unbelievable. But I I think the thing is when you're in an area that's known for certain food, like if I'm in San Diego, like maybe I'll do the fish tacos, right? Like because they're kind of known for that in that area. Like in Seattle, I'm trying to think. Like I think maybe I had like some good sushi there at the stadium. Like I'm just trying to remember, but like San Francisco, they have the garlic. They're near Gilroy, so they have a lot of the garlic products, which are really good. Trying to think, Miami. Unfortunately, the new stadium there is okay. It's not my favorite. They did have a few. They did have some I think I tried a Cuban sandwich there, which was very good. So that being Miami, that was kind of something I saw at a couple stands. So that's pretty much where I lean. Colorado, for example, they have some interesting ones. Like Colorado, they call them the Rocky Mountain oysters, which are actually bull testicles that they fry. So so you get interesting things like that. Actual testicles. That's an actual dish you can buy at the ballpark. So Kansas.
They're iconic ones that so you visited all the parks 3 times over the course of about
all the cities, but the parks changed for some of them, because they got new parks. 98, 08, and 18. So the only ones that were the same were Wrigley and Fenway for all 3, and they also evolved. But the other ones, when I went, the biggest jump was from 98 to 08. Lost a lot of the old ballparks. But I think a lot of them, it was time. The modern.
Did the food come with them to the new, or are there iconic?
Some of them have, like in Baltimore, they have Boog Powell was a famous player for the Orioles, and they have Boog's Grill out in the outfield, and that's been there since the start. It's a sort of a spot where people go. I think a lot of it's like the atmosphere too. When there's spots, they're losing a lot of the younger fans these days. It's too slow of a game. They're trying to do whatever they can to keep people interested. And I think they do anything like Yankee Stadium. Like, we're the Yankees. We're not going to do anything cool or creative when we build our new stadium. And then they realized they were losing the millennials and that sort of thing in the last few years. They got rid of like actual seats, and they turned them into hangout like bar area type places where you can get a drink and just talk. Because a lot of people just go to get drunk and talk to their friends, and like they don't care at all. They don't even look at this field unless they hear somebody cheer. They don't even look towards the field. So like it's just a scene to be seen in. Like, so the Yankees made more like hangout. They made a ticket where it's like $25 or something, and you get a beer with your ticket, but it's standing room. So you just walk around wherever you want to go. And like, so things like that, they're trying to change to keep fans and maintain fans and get new fans because someone like me, I'm a diehard. I don't mind that it's slow. I'm thinking about it, but other people, it's just boring. So, but there's definitely great food in every park. The first time I did it, I tried to have nachos in every park for whatever reason. I don't remember. I had to read my old manuscript to see if there was one I really liked. But yeah, I just the easiest thing would be to see what that city was known for and try to order something. So I'm not trying to think. Minneapolis. I don't remember anything. Oh, you know what? I think I had like pierogies or something there. Would that make sense? I think they had
yeah. I haven't been to the new stadium.
They had a really good pierogi.
When it was the old Metrodome, they had this delicious waffle sundae for years. When I was growing up, they had it at every event. So that's the only one I remember.
But just because you are from Minneapolis, I do love Target Field. That's actually one of my favorite ones too.
No, I've not been yet, so shame on me. I've been by it how many times? So,
nice place, and like I'm a Yankee fan, so I went with my friend 4 or 5 years ago for the weekend or something, and we literally bought seats on the dugout for like $100. Like resting my beer on the dugout, that would cost me $3,000 at Yankee Stadium or something ridiculous. Like, I've never sat in the good seats at the new Yankee Stadium in 11 years. I travel to these parks sometimes to follow the Yankees so that I can get really good seats because I have a lot of points. So I can fly somewhere for free, stay for free, and then I'll spend $100 or $150 to sit in the first 5 rows because I can't do that. It take me a half hour to get to Yankee Stadium, but I'm not going to spend $1,000 to sit, down low. I just won't. I mean, I could do it if I wanted to, but it's not like I don't value it that much that I would spend that. So I use my points and go somewhere else and spend 100 or 150.
And you mentioned points, so that's a big change from. Tell us your method and means of doing each of these. So one was in your early 20s, visiting all parks, then a decade later, and then another decade later.
So it kind of evolved, and actually, I didn't mention this earlier when I talked to you, but the project to me, it's a project. The first time I went in '98, I kept a notebook, like notes of the trip, just a journal. And then afterwards, I went through my journal. Like 6 months later, I went through my journal and I expanded it and turned it into a manuscript. And I had a lot of pictures from then. But, back then I had some camera. You had to get the film developed. And I have pictures, but, no video. 10 years later, I decided to do it again. And I brought a video camera along. At the time, I had a videography business. I still do. But I actually had a decent camera to bring along, small one. Filmed a lot of people. I wrote a blog, which I had a lot of followers for at the time, and Stefan recently went to check, and apparently I let the URL lapse, so I have to look into that. Ballparktag.com. Apparently, some guy in Chicago now owns it, but that was my URL. And then when I went 2 years ago, I also filmed. So the first time I did it, I did mostly driving. I did a few flights, not many. And second time I did it in 2008, I still drove a lot, but I did a few more flights, but still mostly driving. I had a Jeep Wrangler, the same one both times. And then 2 years ago, I had a 2-year-old at the time, and I knew I couldn't just go for a block of 6 or 7 weeks like I did the first 2 times. So I incorporated it into family vacations and things like that. And I did it over the whole 6 months, and I did majority of flying. I mean, I even flew to Boston. I didn't even, it's a 3.5 hour drive, but I got a flight for 5,000 points or something, and I was like, why bother? Why bother driving? I have so many points. So it's just crazy. Like I stayed in a gorgeous Hyatt in Boston with probably the free night certificate that you get with the credit card, a $300 or $400 room. I stayed there with a free night certificate. So all for the $95 annual fee, But anyway, I did mostly flying, and it's just crazy how little I kept a running tab of what I spent. I spent way more out of pocket on the first one when I was 22 years old than I did 2 years ago because I was doing so much with points. It was just comical. Like my biggest expense was probably food and some Ubers and the ballpark tickets here and there. But I would try to get cheap tickets as part of my little game. Like when we do the point stuff, for a lot of us who are big thinkers like Stefan and I, with like extremely high IQs, we need to keep ourselves entertained. So this is all a game. So part of the game for me is is just trying to get in the ballpark as cheap as I could and maybe get into a better seat and just keep the expenses down, like just for fun. So I would try to get a ticket for $5 if I could, or whatever I could do. So anyway, it was crazy how I used Avios, I used United, I used other foreign currencies that would book American flights, whatever I could do to get around. But I mostly flew, and it was so I did it 3 times. And I kept the video, and I haven't done anything with the video from either trip really. Part of what I'm thinking, which is kind of unique, I'm 44 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do it again in 8 years, my sons will be 12 and 9. So I feel like I'll take them with me to a lot of the parks. Maybe we'll rent an RV and do it for a month in the summer or something like that. And then 10 years after that, I'll be like 62, 3, something like that, which will be sort of retirement age. And then if I'm able to accumulate all of this footage and put it together, and plus the story that I wrote the first time, I feel like maybe I can do a lifetime documentary, put it together.
Yeah.
I'm still alive and actually do this, which would be pretty unique, showing the transition, doing it as a 22-year-old to like doing it at 62 and all the material I've accumulated and experiences. And that's sort of where I'm leaning with right now to do with this. Just something about it unique. Maybe do something for the Hall of Fame, something like that they can put out there and show. I don't know. I mean, I just like to do it, but I think maybe there's a project there because I have a videographer, filmmaking background, and creative, and like to write, that sort of thing.
So for people not familiar with baseball, talk about the iconic parks to visit. We'll say in a year, 2 years, 3 years, whenever hopefully we're back to attending these in person.
Hopefully this year, but I doubt it. The two that stand out, that everyone talks about are Wrigley Field in Chicago and Fenway in Boston, because they're the original parks for the teams. They're the only 2 teams that really haven't, taken their old stadium and just tore it down and put a new one. And they're also in the city. Like Fenway is like smack dab in the middle of Boston. Like you're walking around Boston, the area where Fenway is, you might not even know it's a ballpark. It looks like the outside is looks like an old factory. It's just brick wall. Like it's not like an obvious ballpark if you're just walking around. And Wrigley, also in the city. And a lot of the trend these days is to move the parks to the suburbs or out a little bit. So it's nice to just have it right in the middle of the city. So I would say those 2, just because they are the most famous at this point and the oldest. But if you want to just have more like a fun experience, you don't really care about history. I mean, I love San Francisco as a ballpark. You spend the whole 4 hours there, not even look at the field, and have a blast. Just there's a trolley out there you can sit in and watch the game and have a beer. There's views of the bay, gorgeous. They have all the kayakers sitting out there on the boats waiting for home runs. It's the food. They have a food court that's like sort of outside, like it's like there's no views of the park, but it's like real regional food. Really cool. Like that's just my favorite place to go. Dodger Stadium is a famous stadium as well. It's older, pretty old, Chavez Ravine. It's fun to go there, but the Dodger dog is famous in baseball. If you go there, you have to order the Dodger dog.
Oh, okay.
Dog. Anyway, there's this episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry went to Dodgers games. It's actually an interesting documentary on Netflix. I don't know what it's called, but a guy was accused of murder and his alibi was he was at a Dodgers game and they couldn't prove it.
Mhm.
But then he remembered that he saw them shooting some kind of television show in his section. It turns out they were shooting Curb Your Enthusiasm. So they went back, the lawyers, and they figured it out, and they had deposed Larry David and all this stuff. And they realized then once, and they got all the footage that wasn't used.
Mhm.
You could
Mhm.
see the guy 10 rows behind Larry David or whatever, or when Larry walked out, he passed the guy sitting next to his kid in the stands. And they used that footage from Curb Your Enthusiasm to exonerate the guy because he was going to
Oh.
jail for murder. I don't know what it's called. It's an interesting documentary. It's on Netflix. I'm sure if you Google it, you'll see it. But anyway, it's a cool ballpark. Also older. Baltimore, as we said, was the original of the newer ballparks. Came out a little over 30 years ago, and it still sustains that feel of just being just a newer, nicer ballpark. It's just a fun place. They have outside areas around the stadium where you can get a cheap beer or a hot dog or crab cake before the game. And like for me in New York, everything's expensive, so I go to Baltimore and I get 2 or 3 beers, a hot dog, and a crab cake for $15 before I walk in the stadium. I'm feeling like $1 million. It's great. You get the tickets. I mean, I got a ticket for Yankees Orioles about 10 years ago. I was in the second row or third row. I was getting tremendous pictures and all this stuff that I would never be able to do in Yankee Stadium. So that's also a favorite, and it's fun and lots to do. And Baltimore, it's right in the inner harbor of Baltimore. So if you're coming to America or coming from America and you haven't been to Baltimore, Baltimore gets a bad rep as dangerous and lots of crime. And it's probably true. If you've ever seen The Wire, Baltimore is not, it's not exactly the nicest city that ever existed, but the inner harbor where the stadium is awesome. Like there's there's 2 Hyatts right there. There's a Marriott right next to the ballpark that I stayed at last time I went. And you have a beautiful aquarium right there, one of the most famous aquariums in the country. Great food court. So you could spend a weekend down there, go to the ballpark, check out the submarine, the historical stuff in the inner harbor, and have a fantastic weekend. So I highly recommend Baltimore in stadium and the inner harbor.
And for someone who doesn't know baseball, they've heard of this as a bit of Americana. How do you enjoy your day at the ballpark if you're really not too interested in the game itself?
That reminds me, there's a guy on Twitter, British. I can't think of his handle, but he's a British guy, knew nothing about baseball. Came here last year. I don't think he went to all the parks. I'm not sure. I think his handle's Baseball Brit. So if you're British or from another country, you don't know much, look for the Baseball Brit. He's got quite a following now. He knew nothing about baseball. He was asking people what to do or what teams he should follow. And after his year, I don't know why he decided to do this. He's now a big baseball fan, and he's going to minor league parks and all that. So if you're coming over and don't know anything, I mean, the quintessential American thing is to just have a beer, get a hot dog, go sit down, talk to your friends, watch, it's just a nice leisurely afternoon out. Like if you go to a basketball game, you got to kind of pay attention. It's cramped. It's inside. Football, you can't really see what's going on. It's a big stadium, lots of stuff. Baseball is a leisurely pace. There is no clock. There is no timer. A baseball game could be done in an hour. A baseball game could last 12 hours. There's no timer. There's a sense of just a slow, easy pace. Even if you don't know what's going on, you can learn. You can ask people. People will be willing to give you information. But just to sit there and just be outside, walk around. A lot of these parks, because of people's short attention span or because people don't like that baseball's too long of a game, a lot of parks have put all these things in, these distractions. Just like you feel like you're at a carnival or a amusement park. So you don't even have to care or watch baseball at all, and you'll still have a great time walking around. Some of them have rides, like Detroit has a Ferris wheel.
It's like a cruise ship.
Yeah, it's like, so there's plenty. Actually, Arizona has a swimming pool. If you rent the suite in center field,
okay,
comes with a full size swimming pool.
Oh.
So that's always a big thing. Some home runs have landed in the swimming pool. So they really try to outdo themselves to have other things for you to do at the park besides actually watching the game.
Ah.
So you could be a purist like me, or just be someone who wants to just have an afternoon with a few drinks and some nice weather. And either way, it's a good time. You can get in. People say, "Oh, it's hundreds of dollars to go to a baseball game." You get in for $5 or $10 just to get in a lot of these stadiums to get the cheap seat. Walk around. If it's empty, just go sit down somewhere. Like you don't have to buy $100, $200 ticket to get in these places. So that's another thing.
So talk about that. So you buy a cheap ticket. Where can you go? Where can't you go? Where will you risk being chased?
Depends. Some stadiums don't care at all. Like I've bought a cheap ticket and walked. Yeah, funniest story, which Stefan will appreciate because he could picture me doing this. I went with a friend who was very frugal. We went to Atlanta, the last baseball trip, 2008, 2 trips ago. And he's like, I want to get in for free. So eventually he got some guy. We either got in for free or got like 2 tickets for $10. But I think we got it for free. So he's like, let's try to get better seats. Our seats were like upper deck or whatever. So we saw an usher in the section behind the dugout. And I said, I went up to him brazenly with who's on the $10 bill? Is it a Hamilton or is he on the 20? Who's on the 10? Who's on the 10?
10, yeah, Hamilton.
Is it Hamilton?
On the 20. Yeah. Jackson's on the 20.
I pulled
Jackson's
out.
on the 20.
Who's on the 10? Is it Hamilton? No. Wait.
Hamilton, yes.
Okay. I thought you were okay. So I pulled out my Alexander Hamilton and I showed him our tickets, which were basically closer to the moon than they were to the field. And I showed him that big shiny Alexander Hamilton crisp bill, and he said, "Right this way, sir." He took the $10 bill, walked us down. I figure put us like 20 rows behind the dugout somewhere.
Yeah.
Put us in the first row, on the dugout, and we were kind of cracking up. And then this guy who's a supervisor comes down a few minutes later. He's like, "Where's your tickets?" I'm like, "Oh, I think I dropped them." He goes, "Did you pay that guy? Did he take it?" I go, "I don't know what you're talking about. These are our seats. We just dropped our tickets." They were trying to bust the guy for taking a bribe. Meanwhile, my phone started blowing up. Like my cousin who lives in Philly was watching the Phillies Braves game, and she's like, "Are you at the Phillies Braves game behind the dugout on the dugout?" Yeah, that's me. So I had a couple of those type of stories. So I'd say $10 is typically not going to get you much, but a 20, it's all I had, I think, at the time. But 20 is probably more like it. You slip a 20, a lot of these guys will get you a seat. But like a lot of times, if like in New York, you can't get in these sections. They're really strict about looking at your ticket. But like in other stadiums, I just walk right by the usher like I belong. Walk down like 30 rows, sit down somewhere. And if somebody comes and sits and says that it's their seat, I'll just move a couple rows away. If you gotta like judge like anything else. If the stadium's 30-40% capacity, do that. If it's a Friday night and it's jam packed, then you're probably gonna have to sit in your seat or just walk around the stadium. But typically, just again, like for the game of it, I just do it for fun. Can I afford a little better seat? I could, but it is fun to just buy a cheap seat and feel like I won one. I won one against the man by like slipping down to the 5th row for 3 innings. So I mean, you got to just play it by ear and just see how the stadium looks at night. But you can get into most stadiums for like $10. I wouldn't recommend buying from a scalper outside the stadium these days. I used to do that, but now with StubHub and the other ticket services, to me, I feel like the ticket they're selling you could have also been listed online and sold electronically. So the actual stub you're getting when you go to scan it might not work because the electronic portion has already been sold to someone else.
Oh, okay.
Your better bet is, unless it's a hot game that's sold out, which is fairly rare, just walk up to the box office and say, "Hey, can I get anything for $20?" And they'll say, "Well, we got this, this, and this," and they'll show you on the stage. They'll show you a chart. They'll show you what's available, or go on StubHub and just order one on the app, and it shows up on your phone, and you just go up and show it to them on your phone. You show them the barcode. But just the box, I would go up to the box office probably on that trip. The last trip, I probably ended up at the box office at least 10 of the 30 parks, just buying the cheapest seat they had that day. Occasionally from someone outside, but like I had mentioned, I bought one from a guy in Chicago, a scalper, just because he let me interview him. And I said, sure, I'll buy your ticket if you let me interview. And it turned out to be a great seat and it was legitimate. But typically I won't do that. I basically had him walk me to the gate, make sure that the ticket scanned before I paid him. That's another option too. If you do have someone say, I'll buy it, just walk me to the gate, let them say it's legitimate, and then I'll pay you. Some of them will do that, especially if it's close to the first pitch or the game's already started. If you don't mind missing an inning, you can get some bargains too. People will start unloading them. Although, a funny story on the first baseball trip I did, there was a hurricane in Florida. I was supposed to end the trip with, I was supposed to end it in Florida on Saturday, and the season ended on Sunday. But a hurricane came and things got shifted around, and I was supposed to be in Toronto, and then so the Toronto was my last game on the last day of the season, but I had to go to Florida on Saturday. So I went to Miami, watched the Marlins. Sunday morning, this is the first trip where I didn't fly much. Mm-hmm. So I flew AirTran Airlines to Buffalo from Miami. I think I had a layover in God knows where, Atlanta maybe. The game was at 1 o'clock. I left Florida at like 7, 8 in the morning. I got to Buffalo at like probably 12:30. The game was at 1, and that's, I don't know, 100 miles or so, 80 miles from Toronto. So I had to get a rental car, go through the border, get up to Toronto, and I'm listening to the game as I'm driving, and both pitchers are throwing no-hitters, which means the game's going very fast because nobody's hitting. So 5 innings, it's already an hour. So more than halfway over, it's only an hour long, and I'm still a half hour from Toronto. I get to Toronto, I park the car, I run up, and it's the bottom of the 8th inning out of 9. And there's still scalpers outside trying to sell tickets. I'm like, dude, it's the 8th inning. You just paid $100 for a ticket? So I went to the gate. I had reserved one there. Back then, I actually called ahead and got some of them to give me free tickets because I told them I was doing this trip. And the guy said, I don't see a ticket for you. I said, please look again. They said they had it. He looked and he found it. I got inside. It was bottom of the 9th inning. And one pitcher and a Blue Jays still had a no-hitter. He got within 1 out. Then the guy hit a home run. He got the other out. I was in the stadium for a total of 9 or 10 minutes. My last park on a 7-week trip, last day of the season, and I almost missed it because of some travel shenanigans. But anyway, that was always – and the pitcher who was pitching, unfortunately, died a few years ago, and he also a plane crash, and he got into the Hall of Fame last year, Roy Halladay. So I got to see him in his rookie season almost pitch a no-hitter on my last. So that's always one that I'll never forget. It just was so vivid to me. I was freaking out in the car because they were both throwing no-hitters, and I needed the game to be slower so I would get there before it ended. But lots of Toronto's a fun city too. I mean, the ballpark's okay.
What's happening with Toronto and the season as we have it this year?
Well, I mean, smartly, I think. I mean, they didn't want players. I mean, Canada's done a pretty good job of handling COVID, so they didn't want these teams flying in from America with travel parties of 80, 100 people coming and interacting, and they said no, you cannot play here. So, and this was not even determined until last week. So they were scrambling. And they asked Pittsburgh if Pittsburgh would host them, and they said no. And I thought all along, Buffalo, as I mentioned, Buffalo is it's right on the border, like Niagara Falls. It's right near there, So Buffalo is close to Toronto. That's where their AAA team is. So they agreed the minor league park for the Blue Jays is going to be hosting their games now. But
have you visited minor league parks or any desire to?
I've been to some. It's just I'm not like a total babe. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a Yankee diehard. That's going to the ballparks. It was just something to do, something fun because I like baseball. But really, I'm just a diehard Yankee. Like I don't like just watch tons of random games. like watch every Yankee game if I can. I tape them, whatever. But I've been to a handful, and it's kind of a cool experience because the minor league, they're much cheaper. I mean, you can get a minor league game for $2-3. I mean, like they have dollar beer night, 50-cent hot dog night, all these promotions. They'll have like a singer come, some semi-famous singer, whatever, fireworks shows, whatever it takes to get people in there. But it's much better for families. And a lot of the minor league parks are in smaller cities or areas that couldn't sustain a major league park.
Mm-hmm.
Like Westchester, New York has a minor league team. I mean, yeah, sure, you got the Yankees and Mets close by, but there's tons of people in Westchester. If you're a family man in Westchester and you got a 6 and an 8-year-old and they want to go do something on a Saturday, would you rather drag them down to Shea Stadium or City Field, or go to the Westchester ballpark 10 minutes from your house for $8 a head?
Yeah, and kids, I mean, how many innings do kids typically last? Like,
they don't, the kids, especially the younger ones, they don't know who the players are. They can go get an autograph with some random guy and they'll be happy. They don't know the guy who never sees the major leagues. They're just happy to get a baseball. And so it's much better.
Like taking your kids to Disney and just staying at a hotel and letting them use the water slide, right?
Yeah, we're going, like, I've taken my little guy to Epcot, and we go to that, like, I don't know, what's it called? The downtown Epcot, whatever it is with the, we just go run on the grass, play some games. Like, he's happy. He's happy doing that. Like, like a certain age, like it's the same idea. Like you don't need to go to Disney when they're like 3 or 4 and they don't know that they'll be happy on a carousel at the mall.
Yeah.
So it's the same idea. So for families, I think minor league parks are just a much better value. Okay. You also get to sit closer. You can see the game better. Mm-hmm. It's just all the above. But I've been to maybe 5 or 6 minor league parks.
What about the one? Isn't there one in Coney Island?
I've been to that one. The Cyclones. That's a Mets minor league. I've been Staten Island Yankees. It's fun. That was a view from Staten Island of New York City, and I've been to Toledo Mudhead Stadium. I've been to about 5, but really Trenton Thunder, Yankees, AA minor leagues. But yeah, it's definitely a different vibe. It's all about, to me, about families, about value, about being able to see the ball players. And some of them are going to be superstars, so it's kind of cool to see them when they're younger and more accessible. Mm-hmm. You can get an autograph, you can get a picture. Once they're in the major leagues, all that stuff becomes much more difficult for kids, especially like in the Yankees. They have like what they call a moat up. You can't even get to the expensive seats because it's blocked. So you can't get to the field if when you're a kid in certain areas. You can't even get near it to try to get autographs. So it's not accessible for kids. Like to me, Yankee Stadium. Like I take my son to Yankee Stadium. He's 3 years old at the time last year when we went, and they opened a playground and upper deck. They did that recently because they realized that families with young kids had nowhere to take them. And they're like, we're not coming to the game because our young kids have nowhere to go. So now I take my son to the Yankee game. He could care less. He just wants to go to this playground. So
what's your prognostication on the 2020 season?
I mean, it's not good. I mean, today's a bad day. I mean, 15 people on the Marlins have COVID, and I've watched some of the Yankees, and they're not really socially distancing well in the dugout. They don't have masks on. I mean, they say they're doing this and that. I mean, I've seen high fives, slaps. I mean, if no one's going to enforce it, it's they had a whole gamut of rules that they put in place to try to keep safe. But some of them are just obviously not being enforced. You can tell by watching TV that they're not enforcing them. And, this is going to end quickly and badly if they don't really get on top of this situation and learn from it. I mean, luckily the Marlins are a pretty bad team with a pretty poor fan base. But they're still important to this season because other teams need to play them in order to get their games in. So the Marlins can't just take off for 2 weeks. They're going to have to field the team. And the MLB is going to have to make sure, like I was reading an article, it's all these dominoes. Like they played the Phillies. Now the Yankees are playing the Phillies. And then the Red Sox have played this team and the Mets. So all of a sudden, 8 or 9 teams all of a sudden are exposed to these Marlin players. So that's how it could get out of hand quickly. If a lot of them were exposed before they played the series before the Phillies or the series after, and and then the teams that traveled to the next stadium, and then they have a couple guys that picked it up from the Marlins. The next thing you know, it's 10 of the 30 teams are out of commission. So that's why they need to nip in the bud quickly and figure out ways. I think they all should wear the gator masks like the skiers wear, like just to pull up over their face. They're not mandating that on the field right now. I mean, it's just silly to me, like that these guys aren't wearing something when they're on the field. I mean, like a catcher and a batter and an umpire, they're right in each other's face. First baseman and the guy who gets a hit is standing on first base. They're a foot away from each other. I mean, the guy sneezes into the other. I mean, there's just any number of things where I was at Home Depot today and some guy started coughing up like he's just trying to get his lung out. And I sprinted, Stefan, like you've never. I would have been drafted in the NFL if they caught my sprint speed when I heard that cough today. The guy was, I mean, he was hacking up a lung like he was doing it as a joke. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't think he was, but it was like, it's a different world now. But I mean, you hear that.
Hightailing it to Pennsylvania. You said you've just closed on a place. What's the area?
So Poconos, if people are familiar with that, it's just like a.
So Poconos, I think, is worth explaining because I only know of it because of my relatives in New York. Yeah.
Back in the day, it used to be like the lovers joke, like where you go to a hotel there on your honeymoon, they had heart-shaped beds and tubs and beer ceiling. That was kind of the Poconos joke, but they still have some of that. But there's lots of areas. It's just rural. It's Pennsylvania. It's near the Delaware Water Gap, which is you're an outdoorsy person. It's just kayaking, camping.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of ski hills in that area, snow tubing. I mean, just all sorts of outdoor activities. So the crazy thing is, it takes us. We live in Hoboken, which is in New Jersey, right across the river from it. Like I could see Manhattan from my apartment, so I'm right there. I lived in Manhattan for 15 years. To get to where we're growing, it takes us about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. Now, the property value from what this cost here to there is unbelievable. Like we bought a full house, like a 2,000 plus square foot house, and it's about a fifth of the value of my 1,300 square foot apartment in Hoboken. But it's a gorgeous house. We're doing some work to it. I have a contractor there doing stuff. But at the end of the day, it's unbelievable what kind of value you can get. So my wife and I, just being here in the pandemic with the kids in an urban area, we don't have a yard. There's nowhere to go. So we're kind of stir crazy and we're kind of in a lull. New Jersey's doing great right now. New York's doing great. Connecticut. But we anticipate it's going to come back, in the winter, the fall. And we don't want to be stuck with our pants down again and have nowhere to go, nothing to do. So we had friends looking up there. It was very quick. I literally went up the weekend of June 6th, saw 5 places, saw one I was interested in, went back the next weekend, looked at 5 places, saw the one again we liked, put an aggressive offer in, got it accepted, went through the process. The market was going so crazy that week by week, I think first week we went was the first weekend or second weekend they let people come look in like 10 weeks because of COVID. So there was all this pent up demand that people want to look at stuff. I think the people that agreed to a contract with us within a couple of days realized they could probably get another 20, 30 grand for the place because the market was just going so crazy and there was like nothing available. They were trying to get us to like get out of the contract by not agreeing to anything. And I said, okay, fine. You don't want to give us $5,000 or $6,000 in concessions on the closing? That's fine. We'll take it. Because I knew the house we got was so awesome and I wasn't seeing anything else that looked like it. I decided to take it. So we closed on July 16th. So June 1st concept, July 16th closed. And we're planning right now with the progression of the work schedule. We have floors getting put in. The contractor's got a good month. About August 20th, we're planning to go out there for a good 2 weeks up through like Labor Day. My son, we got to see what they're doing with school. He's got preschool. We're assuming there's going to be some remote aspect to it. So the plan is in the fall. My wife's, got a pretty good job and they're letting her work from home like most people. So, that's not, they said at least till January 1st, nobody's going in. So we know that. So let's just say the rest of this year, we'll just go around my son's schedule. If he has to go to school 1 week and then off a week or 2 days on, 3 days off, we'll just go back and forth. So at least we have a yard and some space. The place has pools and different activities we can do, ski hill. So it's just an escape. Plus our budget. I mean, we were spending a lot of money on daycare before, and then the kids were home.
Sure. Yeah.
We were spending a lot on traveling. Even with points, you spend on food and all Ubers and whatever else. So we weren't spending any on traveling. So all of a sudden, that with the fact that the interest rates were insane, I think I actually had it wrong. I thought the rate was 3.125. My wife corrected me and said it's 3.0. So we got a 3.0 rate on 30 years, which is pretty crazy. Now part of the reason it worked is our apartment in Hoboken, we refinanced in May, and we saved. I think we're saving $400 or $500 a month on what we were paying before with the refinance. So that savings, along with all the other stuff, and the fact that we wanted more space, what blows people's minds is it's much cheaper for me to buy a full house in the Poconos than to try to buy a bigger apartment in Hoboken. Like if I wanted to go from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, go from 1,300 square foot to say 1,800 square foot, that might be like $500,000 more. But to just buy a house, it's like a couple $100,000, in the Pocono. So it's cheaper for us to buy a full house than to upgrade our current living situation. I'm like, I don't think we can afford a 3-bedroom, but we can buy a house. So
congrats on that. Congrats on that.
Thank you. It's my wife's excited. My standard line for her when we're looking at the place had like this horrible Formica fine. It was garbage. Tear it out. So we're looking at granite and what's the other one? Quartz. And she's looking at different ones. And I'm like, remember, this is not our forever home. This is a vacation home. So like if this was our forever home, sure, get the quartz, get the better one. Let's get the lower priced granite of the 3 options because it's still granite and it's a vacation home. So she's excited because she's never gotten to do. We watch all these house hunter shows, so now she gets to do this sort of stuff and renovate. I try to keep the price down a little bit, but we have a pretty good contractor, family friend, has done a lot of stuff for us, and he's doing a lot of it. We're using Home Depot for a lot, just because they're easy and close. And we have the kids. It's hard to do stuff. It's hard to pick out furniture or pick out a floor or pick out all this stuff when your 4-year-old just wants to go to the playground or watch videos or whatever. So it's hard to take him to Home Depot for 2 hours and bored out of his mind. And the baby just wants to eat milk or change the diaper or whatever. And he's like, what are we doing here? So we have it's a tough deal. So we're trying to renovate, set up the house, and pick furniture, pick paint, pick floors, pick granite, do all this stuff while also maintaining kids. But once it's done, we're hoping a month from now we'll be there, or 3 weeks from now, 3-4 weeks, and be able to use it. And then when flying and be able to do trips again comes around, we're looking at it as an investment too. It's a popular area, just to rent it out, just people that want to come up for skiing or the summer, pool, whatever. So we're gonna try to at least make some of our money back during the year too. But we'll probably wait a little bit on that, see how COVID goes and that sort of thing. Before we do that, but doing a lot of shopping, a lot of credit cards have been opened. Pretty awesome. Usually people get a new credit card and they're like, how am I going to spend this $4,000 in 3 months or whatever it is? And they manufacture spend or do whatever. And I'm more like, how am I going to get 3 more cards? And then I got 3 cards. And I didn't even like Chase. I was on the cusp. I had gotten 524, so I'd gotten a few this year. I wasn't sure I could get one more in, and I didn't know which one to go for. So I was thinking the Southwest, but it was a crappy offer. So I went for the the British Airway one, which was like 100,000 points. It was like 50,000 after $3,000 spend, then another 50 after 17,000, And I'm like, I don't know, is it even worth it or whatever? But now it's at the point, the other 2 cards I have, the Amex Platinum, I got a second one, which I didn't know through one of these millions of podcasts and things I listen to. Apparently you can get Amex Platinum business cards like frequently, multiple. So I did not know that. With all the stuff I read and follow, I did not know that I could just. So I got another one where I basically put the address of our new place as the business, because I'm like, well, we're going to rent it out and I'm buying crap for the place. So that's my business. So I put the address and I wrote LLC approved, $10,000 spend for 100,000 Amex points. I spent 10,000.
What was the gap between that and your prayer one?
I got the other one. Actually, Richard Kerr had. I got it through him. Just personal link like 3 years ago. I knew he talked about it. I said, send me your link. I'll get the 100,000 point offer. That was probably about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, recently there's been some of these business platinum and business gold that don't have the lifetime bonus restrictions. I got a business platinum last month.
Oh, you did? I was gonna say offline. There's a certain rep whose name's going around.
There's a few, yeah.
She's really good at passing these things through. So I called her and literally she was so nonchalant about it that I didn't even realize I was approved. Because the way she said it, I go, "Oh, I'm approved."
Yeah, that's true. She was just like, "Yeah, and it'll be sending the card to this address."
So I literally spent the 10,000 in like one purchase because we got floors for the house and it was like $10,000 to get the floors that we needed. So I literally done. That card's done. So now I had a Surpass card. I had never gotten the Surpass card, so I finally got, because that's the hot card right now because you get the food credit. And you get the Aspire card. My bad. So I got the Aspire. I never got the Aspire. My wife had the Aspire. So you get the food credit and then the airline credit, which is a little harder to hack. I did JetBlue on my other Amex. I switched to JetBlue because that was crediting. And on this one, I bought two $99 flights to St. Louis to do a potential another trip to visit the in-law, and they both credited. So I got those credited. I mean, I guess I could be clawed back on that. I don't know how that works exactly. I mean, I didn't ask them to credit it. I just bought the flights, and they credited me. So anyway, and you get the $250 food credit. So right off the bat, I'm already, I'm still working on the food credit, but my son, like literally every time we're out, he goes, "Can we go to the Happy Meal place?" I go, "It's called McDonald's." He's calling it the Happy Meal place, and I'm like, whatever. I've spent about $100 of my Surpass or my Aspire credit at McDonald's getting my son McNugget meals. But we're going to get 150,000 points plus. I think you get the free night up front, don't you? With the Aspire, don't you get one up front? Like anywhere Hilton, Hilton changed it where now you can go any day during the week. It's pretty crazy. Like I can use it at I could use it in Maui in theory any day of the week at the Wailea. So whatever. That was a no-brainer. But I knocked that off in like one furniture purchase. So now I'm like I got to get some more cards. But in the meantime, I have the 17,000 on the British Airways card to get to 20, which, if you do like the cost benefit analysis, it's like, is it worth? But at this point, I just when in doubt, I just put it on there. I'm like, well, I'll get the 50,000 Avia, and they give you a year to do the rest of that one. But I have some other substantial charges coming up, and what else we're doing, which is interesting, which I would never do, is I had about 350,000 Chase points, and now that they're doing the 1.5 price erase deal, we didn't even have the CSR, but I had my wife upgrade her Freedom Unlimited, which we weren't even using. So we upgraded that last week, and they said on the thing it was only 450, so we're not paying the 550. I think they said that maybe we'll get $100 credit, so it's 450 annual fee, but the $300 travel credit you can use for was it groceries and gas? Gas, right? They just automatic price erase gas too, or no?
Yeah, I haven't followed. I don't have the cards.
Oh, that's right. 10x.
All right, we're done here.
10x. Anyway, so we're gonna do $5,000 or so at Home Depot on that card. I mean, normally I would never use 350,000 points for chase points for price racing, but it's like I have so many other points, I'm not using them. I'd rather save 5,000 out of my pocket and do it, and then just do the freedom quarters to, I'll rack up my chase freedom bonuses to when I get down to zero or whatever. But that's another way we're funding the house, paying for stuff with that. So credit cards are a huge part of it.
There's a use for points without travel. Congrats on the place.
Thank you
for joining us tonight. All the tips, all
the
ball stuff. We'll watch to see what happens with the season.
If anybody wants to reach out to me, give them for baseball stuff. Just give them my email address until I figure out what happened to my blog. Thank God I talked to you. I had some URL brokers trying to sell it for thousands of dollars.
When you sent me the link, I thought you were trying to get me to buy the URL. What's going on here? He's trying to.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, man. It was fun.
Thank you.
Good talking to you.
Thank you.
I hope to see your face at the Lobster Shack. Yeah. When times are good again, you're gonna fly right out here and double lobsters on me.
Oh wow!
If they don't have them, here's the caveat: if they don't have the double lobsters when we go, you're paying for my meal. So you better hope we get there early. We got to do a 5 o'clock reservation.
We'll be there 5 o'clock at the bar to see Mario. All right, and you.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Bye.